Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly through the dim, flickering streets of ancient Rome. You're wrapped in a soft cloak, the night air cool against your skin, and there's a faint scent of olive oil and smoke lingering in the alleyways. Somewhere nearby you can hear the echo of sandals on stone and the occasional burst of laughter from a distant tavern. Tonight you'll wander through the hidden world of midnight cravings in the Roman Empire, a world of strange, delicious, and sometimes baffling dishes that the ancient Romans adored after dark. And, trust me, you wouldn't last 5 minutes in their midnight feast, unless you've got a strong stomach and an even stronger sense of humour. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and if you're listening right now, drop a comment below with your city and what time it is where you are. Let's see just how far this sleepy little journey can travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step carefully along the worn cobblestones, the soft shuffle of your sandals barely making a sound. Above you, the windows of apartment buildings, insula they call them, glow faintly with oil lamps, their flickering lights casting dancing shadows along the walls. It's late. Very late. Most respectable Romans are already asleep, curled up on their hard beds, wrapped in woolen blankets. But you? No, you're just getting started. The streets feel strangely alive at night. Somewhere nearby you catch the faint aroma of roasted barley and honey cakes drifting from a bakery still warm from its ovens. And right there, under the quiet stars, you realize that the Romans weren't quite like us when it came to their eating habits. Unlike modern folks who might sneak to the fridge for a midnight snack, Romans took the entire idea of after-dark dining to another level. It wasn't just about snacking, it was about indulgence, a social affair, and sometimes downright decadence. You take a turn and stumble upon a scene that makes you smile. There's an old man seated on a wooden stool, lazily spooning something from a clay bowl. His eyes are half closed, enjoying every bite, and beside him sits a loaf of bread split open, glistening with olive oil and herbs. He catches your eye, grins toothlessly, and points at his bowl. Pulse, he rasps out, before taking another spoonful of the thick, porridge-like dish made from spelt grains, simmered slowly with herbs and garlic. Ah, pulse. The humble staple of the Roman diet, often served hot and steaming, especially in the quiet hours of the night when everything else had cooled. And here's a fun fact. Historians still debate just how widespread pulse really was. Some claim it was a common comfort food across all classes. Others argue it remained mostly a dish of the poor and soldiers. Either way, tonight it smells oddly comforting, earthy, rich, and faintly nutty. You lean in, curious. The old man chuckles and offers you a taste. Hesitantly, you scoop a small bite onto your wooden spoon. It's surprisingly good. A little bland, sure, but there's something soothing about it, like oatmeal with a hint of thyme and black pepper. As you savour the bite, the streets begin to whisper more stories to you, tales of what other midnight wanderers might be eating behind closed doors. You remember hearing about honey-drenched pastries called globi, deep-fried dough balls coated with honey and poppy seeds. They were often served at late-night gatherings, especially among wealthier Romans looking for a sweet end to their indulgent feasts. And speaking of feasts, did you know that some Romans were notorious for throwing parties that lasted well past midnight? They even had a name for it, commissatio, essentially a drinking banquet that spiraled into the wee hours. Think of it like a college party, but with more wine and fewer red plastic cups. You stroll onward, passing under an ivy-draped archway, the air growing cooler as you walk deeper into the heart of the city. Somewhere nearby, a group of young men laugh uproariously, their voices slurring as they belt out a drinking song. You can almost see them seated in a grand dining room, reclining on couches as slaves rush to bring platters of roasted meats, bowls of olives, and pitchers of spiced wine. But not everyone ate like that. For many Romans, midnight meals were far simpler, bread dipped in olive oil, or a handful of dried figs and nuts tucked away for later. You pause by a fountain, the cool water trickling softly, and wonder how many people throughout the centuries have stopped at this very spot after a midnight meal. Suddenly a cat darts across the square, chasing something invisible in the shadows. You chuckle softly. Even in ancient Rome, it seems, some habits never change. But as you watch the feline disappear into the night, you can't help but think, if this is just the beginning, what else might you discover as you continue wandering through the strange, savoury, and sometimes sticky world of Roman midnight cuisine? For now, though, you take one last deep breath of the spiced night air, letting the scent of herbs, smoke, and warm bread settle into your senses. And somewhere far off in the distance you hear the faint clang of a bell, a reminder that midnight has only just begun. You continue your slow, deliberate steps along the cobbled streets, the city of Rome wrapping itself around you like a heavy woolen cloak. The soft glow of oil lamps casts shadows that sway and flicker, as if the walls themselves are alive, whispering ancient secrets into the night. Somewhere in the distance you hear the faint clatter of clay pots and the soft thud of wooden doors closing. Tonight isn't just about wandering, though. It's about exploring the quiet obsession that Romans carried with them, their love for snacking. As you round another corner, you stumble upon a tiny stall tucked between two looming stone buildings. The stall's proprietor, a stout man with cheeks flushed from the heat of his brazier, is slowly turning skewers of something over glowing coals. The aroma hits you immediately, smoky, savoury, with just a hint of something sweet and spicy. Without thinking, you drift closer, drawn in by the scent. The man doesn't even look up as he mutters, "Lucanica." His voice is rough, but there's a familiar pride in his tone. Ah yes, Lucanica, an ancient Roman sausage, richly seasoned with herbs, pepper, and sometimes even pine nuts or bits of dried fruit. This isn't just any sausage, though. It's a symbol of Rome's love for bold flavours, even in the dead of night. You watch as he slices off a chunk, wrapping it in a rough piece of flatbread before handing it to you. The bread is still warm from the heat of the grill, and the sausage inside oozes with rich, spiced fat. You take a bite, and it's an explosion of flavours, salty, herby, and just a little smoky. The fennel seeds dance on your tongue, and you can't help but smile. The vendor grins knowingly. "The best thing for keeping the night warm," he says with a wink. As you chew, you realise that this wasn't just a late-night snack. It was a tradition, a ritual almost. Romans didn't eat Lucanica merely to stave off hunger. They relished it, savouring the mingling of textures and spices as they sat under the stars. You wander away, still nibbling on your sausage, and think about how different Roman snacking culture was from the modern world. There was no such thing as guilty pleasure here. In Rome, food was celebrated, no matter the hour. Some Romans even went so far as to prepare elaborate midnight spreads, complete with roasted nuts, olives marinated in vinegar and herbs, and tiny fish preserved in salt and oil. These were not simple snacks. They were crafted with intention and care, designed to impress and satisfy. But here's something that might surprise you. Historians still debate just how common midnight snacking was among everyday Romans. While the upper class certainly indulged, it's unclear whether the average citizen had the luxury of such decadent nighttime treats. Some scholars suggest that most common folk stuck to simple fare, perhaps a crust of bread dipped in wine, or a handful of dried fruit tucked away from the day's market. Still, as you walk deeper into the city, it becomes clear that snacking wasn't just about class or wealth. It was about comfort, about finding small joys in the quiet hours when the city's usual noise had faded away. You pass by a small group huddled around a low fire, their faces illuminated by its glow. They're sharing bowls of moritum, a garlicky cheese spread mixed with herbs and crushed nuts, scooping it up with hunks of coarse bread. The scent is pungent, but oddly inviting. You can almost feel the heat of the fire against your skin as you watch them laugh softly, passing the bowl back and forth like a secret. One of them catches your gaze and motions for you to join in. You hesitate for just a moment before sitting down on the worn stone step beside them. They hand you a piece of bread smeared generously with the creamy, tangy spread. As you take a bite, the strong flavours rush over you, sharp garlic, peppery arugula, and the rich, salty tang of aged cheese. It's bold, unapologetic, and utterly Roman. Someone mutters between bites about how moritum was once considered a peasant's dish, eaten by farmers before heading out to their fields. Others, however, insist it was enjoyed by citizens from all walks of life, especially in the late hours of the night. Some say even the poets wrote about it, one man chuckles, his words slightly slurred from wine. Indeed, you recall hearing about a poem from long ago describing the preparation of moritum in vivid detail, a testament to its beloved place in Roman hearts and stomachs. You lean back, feeling the warmth of the fire, the lingering taste of garlic and herbs still tingling on your tongue. The night seems to slow around you, the city's pulse softening into a steady, soothing rhythm. As you sit there, you can't help but smile at the thought that some things never change. Whether it's a greasy late-night burger in a neon-lit diner or a chunk of Lucanica sausage in the shadowed streets of ancient Rome, people everywhere find comfort in food after dark. And tonight you've only just begun to taste what Rome has to offer. Somewhere nearby, a bell tolls softly, marking the hour. You know there are more surprises waiting in the winding streets ahead, more dishes to savour, more stories to uncover. But for now, you savour the last bite of your bread, letting the rich, garlicky aftertaste linger as you rise to your feet, ready to continue your journey deeper into the night. You wipe your fingers on the edge of your cloak as you wander farther, the scent of roasted garlic still clinging to your breath. The streets remain quiet, save for the soft murmur of other late-night wanderers, their footsteps echoing against the worn stones of ancient Rome. Soon another aroma teases your senses, rich, sweet and warm, drifting through the chilly air like an invisible thread, drawing you forward. It's almost like caramel, with just a faint hint of cheese. Curious, you follow it. You round another corner and there it is, a small bakery, its brick ovens still glowing with fading embers. Through the open window you see a baker, his face red from the heat, carefully pulling a tray from the oven. Upon it sits a collection of small cakes, their golden crusts glistening with melted honey. He notices you watching, smiles softly, and gestures you inside with a tired but kind nod. Without hesitation, you step in, feeling the warmth wrap around you like a thick, comforting blanket. He hands you one of the pastries, wrapped in a crisp fig leaf. Libum, he mutters. Ah yes, libum. An ancient Roman cheesecake of sorts, made with soft cheese, flour, and eggs, then baked to a tender golden hue before being drizzled with honey. It was often used as an offering to the gods, but tonight it's yours to enjoy under the dim flicker of oil lamps. You take a bite, and it's like biting into a cloud, soft, creamy, and delicately sweet. The honey pools along your tongue, balanced by the tang of the cheese and the slight earthiness of the fig leaf. You savour every morsel, the quiet moment broken only by the crackle of the baker stoking his coals. It's comforting in a way modern desserts rarely are, simple, rustic, and perfectly suited for midnight cravings. As you eat, he tells you in a hushed voice, that Libum has a long history, once served during religious ceremonies and festive banquets. But over time it became a humble household treat, enjoyed during quiet evenings. Interestingly, historians still argue whether libum was a food of commoners or a delicacy reserved for special occasions. Some records suggest it was a staple of temple offerings, while others point to it appearing in everyday kitchens across the empire. Either way, you can't help but think this little cake deserves far more fame than it has today. As you finish your last bite, the baker chuckles softly and hands you a second pastry, a different one this time, smaller, rounder, with a firmer crust. Melita, he says with a wink. This one too carries the scent of honey, but with an added fragrance of citrus and spice. You nibble carefully and the flavours bloom instantly. Honey, orange zest, and a faint note of cinnamon. It's sweeter than the libum, with a crisp bite that crumbles delicately between your teeth. He explains that Melita cakes were often prepared for midnight celebrations, especially during festivals honouring the household gods. They were meant to bring luck, sweetness, and protection through the long, uncertain nights. As you listen, you can almost imagine those ancient parties, families gathered around small altars, offering cakes like this in hopes of securing another year of good harvests, safety, and peace. Your mind drifts wondering how many generations before you tasted these same flavours, sitting by a hearth with friends and family, the streets of Rome just as quiet, the same constellations scattered above. It's strangely humbling, this connection across centuries, all wrapped in honey and flour. As you finish the last crumb, the baker wipes his hands on a cloth, his face soft with fatigue but contentment. He tells you that even in Rome's bustling heart, the best meals were never the ones found at grand feasts or elaborate banquets, but the simple ones shared with others, sweet, warm, and familiar. You thank him softly, stepping back into the night, your belly warm and your spirit lighter. As you walk away, the faintest breeze carries the scent of those honeyed cakes with you, lingering just long enough to make you smile. And somewhere in the distance, a rooster crows, far too early for morning, but just in time to remind you that the night is far from over. With each step, the city's quiet charm settles deeper into your bones. You glance up at the towering columns silhouetted against the starry sky and can't help but marvel at how something as simple as a cheesecake could make this ancient world feel so alive. But you know there are still more delights waiting for you in the shadows, flavours stranger, richer, and far more unexpected than anything you've tasted so far. And with that thought, you pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders and continue onward, ready for whatever midnight mysteries Rome has yet to reveal. The night deepens as you drift farther from the familiar streets and into the quieter corners of the city, where the stone walls lean in just a little closer and the shadows stretch just a little longer. The warmth of the honeyed cake still lingers on your tongue, but now a new scent curls through the air, sharp, pungent, and unmistakably fishy. You pause, your nose wrinkling instinctively, unsure whether to retreat or follow the aroma out of sheer curiosity. But, well, you've come this far. And besides, isn't this exactly what you set out for tonight? The unusual, the unexpected, the downright bizarre. So you follow it. Soon enough you find yourself standing outside a dimly lit tavern tucked beneath an archway, its doorway flanked by worn statues of Mercury and Bacchus. Fitting, you suppose, given that those gods ruled over trade and wine, respectively. Inside, a group of men huddle around a wooden table, passing around small clay bowls filled with a thick, dark liquid. The scent is overwhelming, briny, fermented, and layered with something almost meaty beneath the salt. You hesitate at the threshold, but a server waves you in with a bored flick of his wrist, sliding a bowl toward you. "Garum," he says plainly, as if that explains everything. And in a way it does. Garum, the legendary Roman fish sauce. It was as ubiquitous in ancient Rome as ketchup is today, used in everything from soups to roasted meats, and yes, even as a midnight snack. You peer into the bowl, its surface shimmering under the flickering lamplight. Made from fermented fish, usually the guts no less, garum was a staple of Roman kitchens. They poured it over bread, mixed it into stews, and even drank it straight, diluted with water or wine. Taking a tentative sip, you brace yourself. And it's not quite what you expected. Salty, yes, almost aggressively so, but rich too, with a deep umami flavour that lingers on the palate like soy sauce, but sharper, more assertive. It's not exactly pleasant, but not terrible either. Mostly it's fascinating. You can see why Romans loved it. There's something strangely addictive about its boldness. One of the men at the table laughs, slapping his knee. "It keeps you awake," he says, raising his bowl in a mock toast. "Better than any wine." Another chimes in, claiming garum is good for digestion. Though frankly, you suspect that's just a convenient excuse for their midnight indulgence. Still, here's the curious part. Historians still argue about just how garum was consumed by everyday Romans. While it's clear that garum was used widely as a condiment, some scholars believe that drinking it straight, especially at night, may have been more common among the lower classes or those looking for a quick fix of salt and calories after a long day. And honestly, after that libum and melita, the salty shock of garum does have its appeal, cutting through the sweetness and waking your senses all over again. You set down the bowl, noticing that the tavern's patrons are now dipping hunks of coarse black bread into the sauce, letting it soak before taking hearty bites. Curious, you follow suit. The bread is dense, almost sour, but it pairs surprisingly well with the intense savouriness of the garum. It's not a flavour you'd crave every day. But tonight, in this smoky, dimly lit room, it feels oddly right. The server, seeing your interest, leans in with a sly grin. "They say the best garum comes from Hispania," he whispers, "made with the finest mackerel and aged for months. Only the wealthy can afford it." You raise an eyebrow, so even fermented fish guts have their luxury versions. He chuckles, adding, "But what we serve here, let's just say it's more local." You both laugh quietly, the sound blending into the low murmur of the tavern. As you finish your bread, you notice jars lined up along a shelf behind the bar, each filled with garum at different stages of fermentation. The server explains that every household had its own version, some mild and others strong enough to peel paint from the walls, or so they joked. Somehow this feels like the most Roman thing of all. Not just the food itself, but the pride, the humour, the ritual of it. You step back outside, the air cool against your cheeks, and take a deep breath to clear your senses. But even as the night air wraps around you, that unmistakable tang of garum still clings to your palate, stubborn and persistent. As you wander back toward the wider streets, you can't help but marvel at how this one sauce managed to weave itself into every corner of Roman life, from the richest villas to the humblest taverns, from lavish feasts to simple midnight snacks. And somewhere deep in the archives of history, scholars are still debating whether garum was truly loved or merely tolerated. You chuckle to yourself, imagining future historians arguing over whether ketchup ever really tasted good. But tonight, as the city settles deeper into its slumber, you've become part of this long, salty tradition. Just another midnight wanderer with garum on your breath. And as you disappear into the shadows once more, the streets seem to whisper after you, promising even stranger flavours ahead. You leave the tavern behind, the salty tang of garum still lingering at the back of your throat as you wind through the narrowing alleys. The city feels quieter now, hushed as if holding its breath. Only the faint flicker of torchlight ahead gives any hint of life, guiding you toward yet another hidden corner of Rome's midnight world. As you approach, you hear the soft clinking of glass, low laughter, and the muted hum of music played on a flute. You've stumbled upon something rare, a private gathering behind a thick velvet curtain drawn across the entrance to a grand villa. Before you can decide whether to slip away unnoticed, a doorman spots you. He raises an eyebrow, glances at your travel-worn cloak, then gestures you inside with the barest nod, as though he's seen countless strangers wander in from the night. You step inside, and it's as if you've entered another world. The room glows with the soft light of oil lamps, their flames dancing against walls painted with lush scenes of Bacchus and Venus, gods of wine and love. Low couches are scattered around, each occupied by guests draped in fine linen, lazily reclining as slaves serve trays of delicacies. Here the wealthy elite indulge in midnight feasts far removed from the simple bread and garum of the streets. You make your way toward a long table, eyes wide at the lavish spread before you, roasted pheasants with crisped skin glistening under the lamplight, steaming bowls of lentils laced with honey and mint, and platters of oysters, their brine pooling into shimmering puddles of silver. But what catches your attention most isn't the display of exotic meats or golden goblets of wine. It's the centerpiece, an elaborate dish piled high with roasted dormice, carefully arranged on a bed of laurel leaves, each one stuffed with a mixture of pork, pepper, pine nuts, and honey. You freeze. Dormice, gleer, the iconic symbol of Roman culinary decadence. These tiny creatures, once fattened in special clay pots called gleraria, were considered a delicacy among the elite. They were stuffed, seasoned, roasted, and served as a show of wealth, and a test of your willingness to embrace Roman customs. A server approaches, offering you one with a sly smile. "For luck," he murmurs, placing it delicately in your hand, as though passing you a rare gem. The roasted dormouse is surprisingly aromatic, its skin crisp to a golden hue, the stuffing spilling slightly from its sides, glossy with melted honey. You hesitate. Even for you, this feels like a line crossed somewhere between curiosity and madness. Still, you're here for the full experience, aren't you? You take a bite. It's rich. Fatty, certainly. The outer skin crackles beneath your teeth, while the filling inside bursts with a sweet, peppery warmth. It's surprisingly tender, with flavors that remind you vaguely of spiced sausage wrapped in crisp bacon. You're not sure whether to be impressed or slightly horrified, but either way you can't deny that it's memorable. Around you the other guests nibble on their dormice with casual elegance, chatting about everything from politics to poetry, as though this were no more unusual than a bowl of olives. One older man nearby leans over, noticing your wide eyes. "Ah, the dormouse," he chuckles, swirling his wine. "Once a symbol of rustic simplicity. Now, a sign you've arrived." He explains that while dormice were once caught in the wild by humble farmers, the wealthiest Romans began breeding them specifically for feasting, creating entire farms dedicated to fattening them up for nights just like this. "Some say," he continues with a glint in his eye, "that emperors themselves demanded them at their banquets." You can't help but wonder whether every powerful figure in Rome once sat exactly as you are now, gingerly tasting this odd little creature beneath the soft glow of midnight lamps. And of course, as with many Roman traditions, historians still bicker over whether the obsession with dormice was widespread or limited to a few eccentric circles. Some claim they were everywhere, adorning every upper-class table, while others suggest they were more of a novelty than a norm. Either way, tonight you've become part of that long, strange legacy. You finish the last bite, unsure whether to feel triumphant or slightly queasy. Still, you can't deny the dish's craftsmanship. Complex, carefully seasoned, and served with a flair that only Rome could perfect. As the music plays on and the laughter swells, you recline back against the cushions, feeling the weight of food and wine settle into your limbs like a heavy, pleasant fog. This isn't just about eating, it's about spectacle, about theatre, about reminding yourself and everyone around you that in Rome, even the oddest things could be transformed into luxury. The older man raises his cup toward you once more, grinning. To strange cravings, he toasts, and you clink your cup to his, laughing softly. And as you sip the spiced wine, you realize that tonight isn't merely a tour of midnight snacks. It's a full immersion into a world where boundaries blur, where hunger meets curiosity, and where every bite tells a story. You rise, thanking your host with a polite nod, and slip quietly back into the night air, the cool breeze refreshing after the warmth of the villa. Somewhere behind you, the party continues, but your path lies ahead, deeper into the city's sleeping heart, where new flavors and new stories still await. The villa fades behind you, its laughter and music drifting into the night like smoke dissolving into mist. You pull your cloak tighter, the cool air brushing against your skin, bringing with it the scent of damp stone and distant olive groves. Your steps carry you toward the quieter streets, where the glow of oil lamps grows dimmer, and the only company is the soft patter of your own footsteps. But soon a new sound beckons, soft crackling, punctuated by the occasional cheerful hiss of something sizzling over open flames. Your stomach, despite everything you've already tasted tonight, stirs with renewed curiosity. You follow the scent, weaving through a narrow alley that suddenly opens into a small square. There, clustered under a canvas awning, is a street vendor with a brazier glowing bright against the darkened walls. He's an older man with a weathered face and eyes that glimmer with mischief. His stall is simple, just a few wooden benches, a collection of clay pots, and the centerpiece, a small iron grill, its surface crowded with skewers of meats and vegetables slowly turning over the coals. Without a word, he gestures to an empty seat, and you oblige, settling onto the rough bench as the fire warms your face. With a practiced hand, he flips a skewer, releasing a fresh wave of aroma, smoky, rich, and tinged with spices you can't quite name. "Panis et poules," he says gruffly, handing you a wooden bowl. Bread and porridge, humble fare but comforting in its simplicity. You dip a piece of bread into the porridge, surprised by its creamy texture. Made from ground grains, barley, wheat, or spelt, it's been cooked slowly, thickened with olive oil, and seasoned with herbs and a touch of honey. The first bite is soothing, the warmth spreading through you like a soft blanket. It's hearty and filling, with an earthy sweetness that lingers pleasantly. As you eat, the vendor slides another skewer onto your plate, small cubes of meat, glistening with juices, lightly charred at the edges. You bite into one, and it's tender, seasoned with coriander, cumin, and a whisper of vinegar. It's simple food, but prepared with care, and you find yourself savouring every bite. You watch as other late-night wanderers approach the stall, labourers, merchants, even a few well-dressed patrons whose jewellery catches the firelight. Everyone is welcomed the same way, handed bowls and skewers without question. Here, status means nothing. In this quiet corner, all are equal under the stars, united by the simple need for warmth, food, and the comfort of shared company. You lean back, feeling the weight of the night settle into your bones, and listen to the soft murmur of conversation around you. Some speak of business deals, others of family news, and a few predictably gossip about the latest scandals from the forum. But your ears perk up when an old man, his voice raspy from years of street-side chatter, begins to speak of food. He tells the gathered crowd of how, in his youth, he'd sneak away from his father's shop to visit the night vendors who sold roasted chickpeas and honeyed nuts from carts with wheels that squeaked down every alley. They called it cicerarietinum, he says, popping a chickpea into his mouth with a toothless grin. Better than gold on a cold night. The others chuckle, and someone else chimes in with their own memory of fig cakes wrapped in laurel leaves, sold by a woman who claimed her recipe came from the gods themselves. The conversation grows lively with tales of street foods both famous and forgotten, each story weaving another thread into the rich tapestry of Roman midnight cuisine. And here's something that catches your attention. Not all historians agree on the significance of street vendors in Rome's culinary landscape. Some argue that these vendors were essential, feeding the masses long after the wealthier citizens had retired to their villas. Others suggest they were more of an occasional treat, an indulgence enjoyed during festivals or on special occasions. But sitting here surrounded by the crackling of the fire, the clatter of bowls, and the warm laughter of strangers, it's clear that these humble vendors played a far greater role than history books might admit. They were the heartbeat of the city's nights, offering not just food, but connection, community, and a sense of belonging. You finish your meal, wiping your hands on a cloth the vendor provides, and he offers you a small cup of warm, spiced wine. You sip slowly, the flavors unfolding with each taste, honey, cinnamon, and just a hint of black pepper, soothing your throat and easing the weight of the night. As you rise to leave, the vendor smiles softly, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Rome sleeps, he says, but we keep her dreaming. His words linger in your mind as you step back into the alley, the warmth of the fire fading behind you. And as you wander deeper into the slumbering city, you can't help but feel that he's right. Tonight you are part of Rome's dreams, woven into her streets, her stories, her midnight meals. And something tells you this dream isn't over yet. The warmth of the street vendor's fire still clings to your skin as you drift farther through the winding streets, your breath visible now in the cool midnight air. The city around you feels softer somehow, the sounds more muted, the stones underfoot worn smooth by countless footsteps before yours. You pass under an archway where ivy spills down like a dark green curtain, brushing against your shoulders. Beyond it, the street widens, revealing a quieter square bathed in silver moonlight. At its centre sits a fountain, the steady trickle of water offering a soothing rhythm to the hush of the night. And yet, beneath that calming sound, another aroma beckons. This one brighter, sweeter, almost floral in its richness. It's a scent that makes your mouth water before you've even identified its source. You follow it instinctively, your feet guiding you to a modest stall nestled beside the fountain. Its vendor, a middle-aged woman with silver streaks in her dark hair, tends to her wares with practiced grace, arranging baskets of fruits with careful precision. As you approach, she offers you a smile, her eyes sparkling in the lamplight. "Fructus ex totius orbis," she says warmly, gesturing to her collection. Fruits from across the world. And what a collection it is. You see figs, plump and dark, their skins nearly splitting with ripeness, pomegranates, their ruby seeds glistening like jewels, dates, sticky and rich, stacked high in woven baskets. There are quinces too, pale yellow with a heady perfume that makes your head swim, and even strange fruits you can't quite name, their colours deep and exotic. She picks up a fig, slicing it open to reveal its crimson heart, and hands it to you with a knowing nod. You take a bite. It's luscious, soft and yielding, its sweetness deep and almost wine-like, with tiny seeds that crunch gently between your teeth. The woman chuckles softly at your reaction. "Brought from Hispania," she explains. "The finest figs in all the empire." As you savor it, she offers you a date next, its sticky skin glistening in the torchlight. This one is richer still, tasting of caramel and honey, its flesh melting on your tongue. It's then you realize that for Romans, fruit wasn't just food. It was status, luxury, and desire all rolled into one. Exotic fruits like these were prized, often reserved for feasts or gifted among the wealthy as tokens of power and prestige. And yet here you are, enjoying them under the open sky, a guest at this quiet midnight market. The woman watches you thoughtfully before pulling out a small ceramic bowl filled with something that looks like candied fruit. She offers you a piece, smiling. "Citrus medica," she says. Citron. You taste it and your mouth tingles with its sharp, almost electric sweetness, like lemon, but more intense, softened by sugar and perfumed with floral notes. She explains that citron was beloved for its aroma and was often preserved in honey or cooked into sweet pastes for special occasions. The Romans believed it could soothe the stomach, freshen the breath, and even ward off certain illnesses. You can't help but chuckle softly at that. Every era, it seems, has its version of the superfood. And yet, as strange as it may sound, there's something undeniably comforting about the sharp, bright taste cutting through the richness of your earlier meals. As you nibble, the woman speaks of traders who travel across deserts and seas to bring these fruits to Rome. Ships laden with figs from Egypt, dates from Judea, pomegranates from Carthage, and quinces from Gaul. Each fruit, she says softly, carries a story. You imagine those stories, the sailors braving storms, the caravans trudging through sand and stone, all to deliver these treasures to the heart of the empire. And here's the curious part. Historians still puzzle over just how widespread these exotic fruits were in daily Roman life. Some suggest they were strictly the domain of the elite, while others argue they appeared more frequently in the markets than once believed. But standing here with the cool night breeze lifting the sweet scents of ripened fruit around you, it's easy to believe that Rome's taste for the exotic ran deeper than any single social class. Perhaps in the quiet hours like these, fruit was simply another indulgence, enjoyed by anyone willing to wander far enough into the night. You finish the last bite of citron, its bright tang lingering on your lips, and the woman hands you a small cloth pouch filled with dried apricots and nuts. "For your journey," she says kindly, her voice soft and knowing. You thank her, slipping the pouch into your cloak, and as you turn to leave, she calls after you, a playful glint in her eye. "Remember," she says, "the sweetest fruits are always found at night." Her words echo in your mind as you step away, the fountain's gentle trickle once again filling the air. And as you disappear into the shadows, your steps lightened by her parting gift, you wonder what other treasures might still be waiting for you, tucked away in the hidden corners of Rome's midnight feast. You stroll away from the square, the sweetness of the fruit still lingering on your tongue, the small pouch of apricots and nuts weighing gently in your pocket. The night air feels crisper now, and the city's heartbeat has softened into a steady, slow rhythm, as if Rome itself is dozing under the stars. But just as you think the night can't surprise you any further, a new scent reaches you, warm, rich and spiced, carried on the breeze like a secret. It's heavier than the sweetness of fruit, yet more alluring than the sharpness of garum. You follow it instinctively, your steps leading you toward a wide avenue lined with tall, imposing columns. There, nestled between towering buildings, you spot a gathering of people seated around low tables, their faces flushed from drink and laughter. You drift closer, drawn by the clinking of cups and the unmistakable aroma of wine infused with spices. A man with a flushed face and a crown of ivy beckons you over, his voice thick with cheer. "Mulsum," he says, holding up a cup with a wide grin. "Wine for the night." He hands you the cup, and the warmth from it seeps into your palms. You raise it to your lips, inhaling deeply. The scent is intoxicating, sweet honey mingled with sharp herbs, and something else, pepper, perhaps, or cloves. You take a sip. It's a revelation. The wine is soft and velvety, its sweetness rounded by the honey, while the spices tickle the back of your throat, leaving a gentle heat that lingers. You savor the taste, realizing why Mulsum was beloved by Romans for centuries. It's not just wine, it's a potion, soothing and invigorating all at once, perfect for banishing the chill of the night. As you sip, the man leans in conspiratorially, his eyes twinkling. "They say," he whispers, "that Mulsum sharpens the mind and loosens the tongue. Good for philosophers and fools alike." You chuckle, imagining toga-clad thinkers debating politics over cups of this golden elixir, their arguments growing louder with each round. Around you, the crowd grows more animated, their laughter spilling out into the quiet streets beyond. Slaves weave between the tables, refilling cups and passing around bowls of roasted chickpeas dusted with herbs. You taste one, enjoying the crunchy shell and soft, savoury centre, a perfect companion to the honeyed wine. It's then that someone nearby begins to recite poetry, his voice deep and steady, weaving tales of gods and heroes, of love lost and found beneath the Roman moon. The others listen, enraptured, their faces softened by drink and story alike. Here, amid the haze of Mulsum and the crackling of fire pits, you realize you've stumbled upon something more than just a midnight snack. It's a ritual, a celebration of life's fleeting pleasures. The man beside you explains that Mulsum was often served at the start of Roman banquets, meant to awaken the appetite and prepare the senses for the feast ahead. But in gatherings like this, it became the centerpiece itself, a drink for long nights and longer conversations. Of course, as with many Roman customs, historians still debate the exact recipes for Mulsum. Some claim it was simply wine mixed with honey, while others suggest elaborate blends involving aged wine, rare herbs, and exotic spices. You sip again, savouring its complexity, and wonder how many variations of this drink have been lost to time, forgotten by all but the streets that once echoed with its praises. Nearby, a young woman raises her cup, her voice clear above the chatter. "To the night," she toasts, her eyes bright with mischief, "and to whatever foolishness it brings." Laughter erupts and you can't help but join in, the warmth of the Mulsum melting any lingering hesitation. You take another handful of roasted chickpeas, their saltiness grounding you amid the swirl of sweetness and spice. Here, in this tucked-away corner of the city, surrounded by strangers who feel like old friends, you understand why the Romans clung to these moments, why they needed their wine, their snacks, their midnight songs. Because beneath all the grandeur and marble, Rome was still a city of people seeking comfort, connection, and joy under the same stars that watched over you now. As the night stretches on, you finish your cup, the last sip honeyed and smooth, leaving a soft warmth in your chest. The man with the ivy crown clasps your shoulder with a grin. "Come back another night," he says, "and we'll show you what real fools drink." You laugh, thanking him, and step back into the cool air, your head light, your heart even lighter. The streets welcome you again, quieter now but no less alive, as though the city herself approves of your newfound revelry. And with the taste of Mulsum still lingering, you continue onward, wondering what other hidden pleasures await in the endless Roman night. You walk on, your footsteps steady but light, the Mulsum still humming through your veins, wrapping you in a soft, sleepy warmth. The streets of Rome are quieter now, but not silent. Somewhere nearby, the faint sound of laughter drifts through an open window, mingling with the rustling of fig leaves in the breeze. The night has deepened, and the moon hangs high, casting long silver shadows along the cobblestones. You feel the city's pulse slowing, but your curiosity keeps you moving forward. Then, as if guided by fate, or perhaps just by your own insatiable appetite, you catch another scent, one that stops you mid-step. It's nutty, roasted, with a faint sweetness that makes your mouth water all over again. It's richer than bread, simpler than the spiced wine, but no less tempting. You follow it down a narrow street until you find its source, a small stall lit by nothing but a glowing brazier, its flames flickering low and steady. Behind it stands an elderly man, his face lined like an old map, his hands working methodically over a shallow pan. He glances up as you approach and grins, revealing a few missing teeth but plenty of charm. "Panis de nux et ficus," he says, gesturing toward a tray of small, dense cakes, nut and fig bread. You watch as he pulls one from the pan, slicing it in half to reveal a dark, sticky interior packed with chopped nuts and chunks of dried figs. He wraps it in a fig leaf, handing it to you with the kind of care usually reserved for fine jewellery. You take a bite. It's chewy and dense, but delightfully so, with the rich sweetness of figs softened by the toasty crunch of walnuts and almonds. Honey glues it all together, its floral notes lingering at the back of your throat. You chew slowly, savouring each mouthful, the cake's satisfying heft settling warmly in your belly. The vendor watches you fondly, clearly pleased with your reaction. "This," he says with a nod, "is food for travellers, for soldiers, for lovers running off into the night." You chuckle softly, imagining each of those scenarios with a mouthful of sticky fig cake. He explains that such cakes were popular among Romans who needed sustenance that could last, simple to carry, long to spoil, yet packed with enough energy to keep one moving through the day. Or night. And here's a curious detail. Some historians believe these ancient energy bars were the predecessors of modern travel foods. Soldiers carried them into battle, and merchants packed them for long journeys, their dense sweetness a comfort far from home. Others, though, argue that fig cakes were more often enjoyed at home, especially as dessert after a modest meal, paired with fresh cheese or wine. The old man chuckles as if he's heard those debates before. "Scholars love their arguments," he mutters, "but we know the truth." He winks, tapping his temple with one gnarled finger. "It's not about when you eat it," he says. "It's about who you share it with." You smile, taking another bite, and the truth of his words sinks in. Food, after all, isn't just about sustenance. It's about comfort, memory, and the quiet joy of savouring something sweet under the stars. Around you, a few other night wanderers gather, drawn in by the same scent that lured you. The vendor serves them each with the same quiet care, the fig cakes disappearing one by one, their wrappers of fig leaves piling up like small trophies on the nearby bench. As you finish your cake, the man hands you a small packet wrapped tightly in cloth. "For later," he says softly, "in case you forget the taste of tonight." You nod in thanks, slipping it into your pouch alongside the dried fruits from earlier. As you rise to leave, he leans in, lowering his voice. "Some say," he whispers, "that fig cakes were sacred once, offered to the gods during festivals, to remind them that even the divine needs something sweet." He laughs, the sound soft and raspy but full of mirth, and you can't help but laugh with him. You step away, your belly full, your heart lighter still, and the flavours of figs, nuts and honey lingering like a sweet secret between you and the night. The city feels different now, not just ancient stone and marble grandeur, but something softer, more personal. A place where midnight isn't meant for sleeping, but for sharing, tasting, and remembering. As you disappear once more into the shadowed streets, you catch yourself smiling. Because somewhere out there, in the quiet corners of the world, Someone else is biting into a piece of something sweet, dreaming of another time, another city, another night just like this. And tonight you're part of that timeless story, another traveller wandering through Rome's endless feast, one bite at a time. You wander onward, the taste of figs and honey still lingering on your tongue, their sweetness slowly fading into the cool night air. The streets grow narrower now, more winding, as if Rome itself is gently leading you deeper into its labyrinth. Somewhere in the distance you hear the faint strains of music, soft flutes and the occasional beat of a hand drum, echoing through the alleys like a siren's call. You follow it without question, your feet finding their way through the twists and turns with ease, as though the city is guiding you to your next destination. Soon the alleys open into a courtyard bathed in moonlight, its marble columns glowing softly in the pale glow. In the centre, a gathering has formed around a low table piled high with bowls and platters. The people here are different from the others you've encountered tonight, young, with bright eyes and laughter that rings freely through the air. They welcome you with open arms, their smiles warm and inviting, as though they've been expecting you all along. "Come," one of them says, pulling you gently toward the table. "You must taste this. It will keep you awake through the longest night." Before you can even respond, they place a small wooden tray in front of you, filled with a curious assortment of snacks, nuts of all kinds, dried fruits, and what appears to be a dense, chewy confection shaped into small squares. You pick up one of the squares, noticing its glossy sheen and the faint scent of honey and toasted sesame. "Try it," your host encourages, eyes twinkling. You take a tentative bite, and the flavours burst across your palate, sweet, nutty, with just a hint of spice. The texture is soft but satisfyingly chewy, almost like nougat, with chunks of almonds and hazelnuts scattered throughout. It's rich but not overwhelming, the perfect balance of sweetness and earthiness. Your host laughs, clearly pleased by your reaction. "Not bad, eh?" he says, popping one into his own mouth. "We call it nux confecta, a treat for those who can't sleep." You savour another bite, letting the flavours melt slowly on your tongue. The honey lingers, sticky and fragrant, while the nuts provide a pleasant crunch. They pass you a small cup of herbal tea, its steam curling gently in the air. You sip it between bites, its warmth soothing and calming, the faint taste of mint and chamomile easing the richness of the sweet. As you relax into the moment, your host explains that these nut confections were a common indulgence during the long Roman nights, especially among those who needed a quick burst of energy. Philosophers burning the midnight oil, merchants tallying their ledgers, or lovers stealing hours in secret. "They say the nuts give you strength," he chuckles, winking playfully, "and the honey keeps your words sweet." You can't help but smile, imagining scholars hunched over scrolls, their fingers sticky with honey as they argue over philosophy and poetry. Interestingly, historians still debate the origins of such sweets. Some suggest they were imported from the East, brought to Rome by traders who travelled the Silk Road. Others believe they were a homegrown invention, born from Rome's love of combining simple ingredients into something indulgent. Either way, they've clearly stood the test of time. You nibble slowly, each bite grounding you further into this soft, timeless night. Around you, the conversation swells, the music lilting softly in the background. There's a peacefulness here, a sense of camaraderie that needs no words. One of the others leans in, offering you a different treat, a small cake filled with dried fruits and laced with wine-soaked raisins. "Try this," they say with a grin. "It's called sapa placenta." You raise an eyebrow at the name, but take a bite nonetheless. It's exquisite, moist, dense, and infused with the deep, rich sweetness of boiled wine. The raisins burst with flavour, while the soft crumb melts against your tongue. This, your host says, gesturing with pride, is the food of poets and dreamers, sweet enough to stir the heart, but heavy enough to keep you grounded. You can't help but laugh softly at the description, but he's right. There's something almost magical about this cake, as though it carries the weight of stories and songs within its layers. You take another sip of tea, the warmth spreading through your chest as the last notes of the flute drift into the air. In this courtyard, under the watchful gaze of marble statues and ancient stars, you feel as though you've slipped into a dream within a dream, a quiet world where the only things that matter are sweetness, laughter, and the gentle passing of the night. Your host leans back, sighing contentedly. Some say, he muses, that the best meals are not remembered by their ingredients, but by the company. You nod, knowing exactly what he means. Because here, surrounded by strangers who feel like old friends, tasting sweets that might have been enjoyed by emperors and beggars alike, you realize that this is the true heart of Rome's midnight feast. Not the luxury or the decadence, but the shared experience, the stories passed around with every bite. As you finish the last morsel of sapa placenta, you feel a soft drowsiness settle over you, not heavy but comforting, like the city itself is wrapping you in a soft, honeyed embrace. You rise, thanking your hosts with a smile, and they wave you off with cheerful farewells, promising that the city still holds many more secrets for those willing to seek them out. As you step back into the cool night air, the courtyard fades behind you, its music and laughter lingering like the sweetness on your tongue. And as you walk away, the streets of Rome seem to hum softly beneath your feet, inviting you onward into the next chapter of this endless, delicious night. You wander farther now, your steps soft and unhurried, your senses wrapped in the lingering calm from the courtyard feast. The sour-sweet taste of oxygala still rests faintly on your tongue, and in your pocket, the little cheese parcel presses warmly against your side, as if it carries the memory of that quiet gathering within it. The city has settled even deeper into its slumber. The streets stretch long and empty, the moon casting pale silver pools across marble columns and shuttered shop fronts. The occasional torch flickers weakly in the night breeze, but most of Rome now glows only under starlight. As you move through the winding alleys, a familiar scent begins to creep through the cool air, smoky, rich, and nutty, tinged with the warmth of roasting oil and sharp herbs. Your curiosity stirs once more. The aroma leads you toward the heart of a small market square, where a few late-night vendors still linger, their stalls half-shuttered, their faces weary but content. Among them is an elderly couple working side by side, their hands busy tending to a large clay pot set over a glowing brazier. They glance up as you approach, the woman's eyes crinkling with a kind smile. "Try the nucius toste," she says softly, motioning toward a bowl of toasted nuts glistening with oil and flecked with spices. Toasted nuts. The man ladles a generous handful into a small clay dish and hands it to you, his hands stained with oil and herbs. The warmth of the nuts seeps into your palms, and you can't resist popping one into your mouth immediately. The taste is bold, crisp and buttery, with just the right amount of salt and an unexpected burst of rosemary and black pepper. There's a slight smokiness, too, from the open flame, giving the nuts a deeply satisfying richness. You eat another, then another, the crackle between your teeth addictive. The woman explains that roasted nuts were a common treat in Rome, particularly almonds, walnuts, and hazelnuts. They were often cooked in oil with herbs and salt, eaten alone or sprinkled over bread and vegetables for added texture and flavour. "These," she says proudly, "are best at night when the air is cool and the oil stays rich and soft." As you listen, she offers you another dish, this one filled with sesame-coated pastries, glistening with honey and shaped into small rings. Sesame honey rings. You take a bite and it's wonderfully chewy, the sesame seeds popping with every crunch, the honey sticky and floral, coating your lips. The combination of the warm, savoury nuts and the sweet, sticky pastries feels almost too perfect, each bite balancing the other like a quiet midnight dance between salt and sugar. The man, noticing your enjoyment, chuckles softly and leans in. "They say," he begins, his voice low and rough with age, "that nuts are for the wise and honey for the fool." His wife swats his arm playfully, laughing. "Then we are all fools here," she says, handing you another pastry. You smile, savouring the easy humour shared between them. As you sit with them, nibbling slowly, you hear tales of how these snacks were staples at Roman festivals and street celebrations, eaten by everyone from slaves to senators, enjoyed under open skies, just like tonight. Interestingly, historians still puzzle over whether such humble street foods were merely snacks or had deeper roots in ritual and tradition. Some believe they were offered to household gods during certain nights, a way to share abundance with the divine. Others insist they were simply the popcorn of their time, cheap, cheerful, and impossible to stop eating once you started. The couple doesn't seem concerned with such debates. To them, these foods aren't relics of the past. They're just life. "We roast, we eat, we laugh," the woman says with a soft shrug. "That's enough." And in this quiet moment, under the pale light of the moon and the faint glow of their brazier, it truly feels like enough. You finish the last of your sesame pastry, licking the honey from your fingertips as the warmth of the food settles in your belly. The man hands you a small pouch filled with a mix of roasted nuts and dried fruits, his eyes twinkling. "For the road," he says kindly, "so you don't forget where you've been." You thank them both with a deep nod, slipping the pouch into your cloak, alongside your growing collection of midnight treasures. As you stand to leave, the woman calls after you, her voice playful but gentle. "Remember," she says, "when the night is long, always keep a bit of sweetness close." Her words follow you as you step back into the cool embrace of the night, the quiet streets once again stretching out before you like an invitation. You feel the weight of your little pouch against your hip, the roasted nuts and dried fruits shifting softly with each step, a reminder that even the simplest things can carry great comfort. And as you walk deeper into the sleeping city, you realize something else. This journey isn't just about food. It's about those tiny, fleeting moments of connection between strangers, between past and present, between hunger and satisfaction. It's about knowing that no matter where you go or how late the hour grows, there will always be a warm light waiting somewhere, a kind smile, and something delicious to share beneath the stars. The night air grows cooler as you drift farther from the glowing braziers of the nut vendors, their laughter still faintly ringing in your ears. The streets are nearly deserted now, save for the occasional night watchman shuffling past, his footsteps steady, the iron-tipped staff tapping softly against the stone. You walk in silence, the weight of the evening's many flavours settling into you like a well-worn blanket. The pouch of roasted nuts and fruits feels reassuring in your pocket, a small treasure from the generous couple whose kindness lingers in your thoughts. As you turn a corner, the city opens up into another quiet plaza, its edges framed by towering columns and arches looming like ancient giants keeping watch. The air here is sharper, carrying the faint scent of herbs and something slightly sour, almost medicinal. It's an odd smell, but not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. You follow it, your curiosity piqued once again. Ahead, you spot a lone stall, its wooden shutters partially drawn, revealing shelves lined with small jars and clay bowls. The vendor, a wiry man with sharp eyes and quick hands, tends a simmering pot, the steam curling into the night like ghostly fingers. He notices you immediately, gesturing with a nod toward a row of ceramic cups neatly arranged along the counter. "Vinum conditum," he says, his voice low and calm. "Spiced wine." You approach, drawn by the comforting warmth of the stall's tiny hearth, and the rich scent now swirling around you, cinnamon, cloves, bay leaves, and something deeper, darker, like dried herbs and pepper. He pours the steaming liquid into a cup and slides it toward you. You lift it carefully, inhaling deeply. It's intoxicating before you even taste it. Warm, rich, layered with spices that tickle your nose and awaken your senses. You take a small sip. The taste is like nothing else you've encountered tonight. Sweet, yes, but not in a cloying way. The honey lingers at the edges, softened by the spices, while the wine itself carries a velvety smoothness, with just a faint trace of something bitter, perhaps myrrh or cardamom. It's soothing and invigorating all at once, and you feel its warmth spread through you instantly, coiling in your chest and settling low in your belly. "This," the vendor says, watching you with a knowing smile, "is what keeps philosophers awake." You chuckle softly, imagining toga-clad scholars sipping this brew as they argue over the shape of the universe. He tells you that vinum conditum was beloved by many in Rome, not just for its flavour, but for its supposed medicinal properties. It was said to ease digestion, cure headaches, and even soothe the heart. Some recipes, he explains, were simple, just wine, honey, and a few herbs. Others were far more elaborate, involving exotic spices brought from the East, rare flowers, and even resins harvested from distant trees. Each family, he says, leaning in slightly, had their own secret blend. You sip again, savouring the richness of the drink, and wonder how many recipes like this have been lost to time, buried beneath centuries of dust and forgotten scrolls. Of course, as always, historians debate its origins. Some claim vinum conditum was a common household staple, while others insist it was reserved for special occasions, a rare indulgence for those who could afford its costly ingredients. But standing here, under the cold night sky with the fragrant steam rising between you and the stars, you suspect it was both. It feels too humble to be purely for the wealthy, but too magical to be everyday fare. As you drink, the vendor hands you a small wooden dish holding another surprise. Tiny pastries, crisp and golden, sprinkled with crushed coriander and soaked in sweet wine syrup. "Globuli," he says simply. You taste one and it's delightful, crisp on the outside, soft within, with the wine syrup seeping through each bite, mingling with the warmth of the spices from the drink. Together the wine and the pastries create a perfect harmony, rich, comforting, and deeply satisfying. Around you a few other late-night wanderers gather, drawn by the inviting glow and the scent of spices. They sit quietly, sipping from their cups, their faces softened by the heat and the sweetness. The vendor watches them with a quiet pride. "Some things," he says softly, "are best shared in silence." You understand exactly what he means. In this small, forgotten corner of the city, words feel unnecessary. The shared warmth of spiced wine, the soft crunch of sweet pastries, and the quiet company of strangers are more than enough. You finish your cup slowly, reluctant to let the moment end, but knowing the night still holds more stories for you. The vendor refills your cup one last time, handing you a small cloth-wrapped parcel with a nod. "For later," he says simply, "when the night feels cold again." You tuck it into your cloak, the comforting weight of it joining the growing collection of midnight gifts you've gathered along your way. As you stand to leave, the vendor gives you one last piece of advice, his voice low and steady. "Rome," he says, "is a city of layers. Peel back enough of them, and you'll always find something sweet beneath the spice. His words linger as you step away, your body warmed from the inside out, your mind drifting with the soft haze of spices and honey. The streets greet you once more, quiet and calm, but somehow more alive now, as though the city itself has softened its edges just for you. And as you continue your journey deeper into the night, the taste of vinum conditum still warm on your lips, you wonder what other layers Rome has yet to reveal. The city feels quieter now, the streets empty but for the distant shuffle of footsteps and the occasional bark of a stray dog echoing between the towering walls. You walk slowly, savouring the warmth that still lingers in your chest from the spiced wine, the flavours of honey, herbs and fire blending into a gentle fog in your mind. The moon hangs high, casting long, sharp shadows across the marble columns and crumbling archways. You run your fingers along the rough stone of a nearby wall, tracing the grooves worn deep by centuries of hands before yours. Your pouch feels heavier than before, laden with the gifts of the night, nuts, dried fruits, cheese, sweets, and now the cloth-wrapped parcel of pastries soaked in wine syrup. Every step makes them shift softly against your hip, a quiet reminder of your journey so far. And yet, despite all you've tasted, there is still room for curiosity. You turn another corner and there it is again, that unmistakable scent of roasting bread and sizzling fat, this time richer, heavier, with a deep earthiness that makes your stomach stir. Drawn by the aroma, you follow it to a dimly lit alley, where a small oven glows like an ember in the night. Behind it stands a baker, his sleeves rolled high, his face flushed from the heat. His hands move with steady grace, kneading dough, sprinkling herbs, and turning flatbreads over the flames with a practiced flick of the wrist. He glances up as you approach, offering a nod that's half greeting, half invitation. Panis et panis fartus, he says simply. Bread and stuffed bread. He gestures toward the counter where several loaves sit cooling, some round and crusty, others long and narrow, their golden surfaces brushed with oil and dusted with herbs. You watch as he slices open one of the smaller loaves, steam pouring out to reveal a filling of spiced lentils, onions, and crushed walnuts. He wraps it in a fig leaf, handing it to you with a slight grin. You take a bite, and it's heavenly, warm, soft, and deeply savoury, the lentils tender but not mushy, the nuts adding a subtle crunch. The bread itself is chewy, its crust crisp from the fire, its interior pillowy and rich with olive oil. The flavours are simple but satisfying, earthy, hearty, and grounding after the sweetness of the wine and pastries. The baker watches you with a knowing smile. Good for the belly, he says, keeps you strong. He explains that stuffed breads like this were popular among labourers and travellers, portable meals that could be eaten quickly but still fill the stomach for hours. Lentils were especially common, cheap and plentiful, but often combined with herbs, nuts, or cheese to add richness. And sometimes, he adds with a chuckle, with bits of salted pork, if one's luck is good. You can't help but laugh softly at that, imagining Roman workers biting into these loaves during midnight shifts or long journeys on dusty roads. Of course, some scholars argue about just how common stuffed breads were in Rome. While simple flatbreads were certainly a staple, the idea of filling them was often considered more extravagant, requiring extra ingredients and time. But sitting here, with the scent of roasting dough filling the air and the warmth of the bread settling in your hands, it's hard to believe these weren't enjoyed by many. The baker hands you another loaf, this one smaller, its crust dusted with sesame seeds, and its filling sweeter, made with mashed dates, honey, and crushed almonds. You bite into it, and the sweetness rushes over you, soft and fragrant, the dates melting into the warm bread, the sesame seeds adding just a whisper of nuttiness, It's comforting in a different way, less hearty, more soothing, like dessert disguised as dinner. These, he says softly, are for the end of the night. He leans back against the oven, his face flushed with pride and heat. They say bread is the heart of Rome, he muses, his voice low and thoughtful. You can take away the wine, the meats, even the spices, but not the bread. You nod slowly, understanding exactly what he means. Bread is everywhere here, in every home, on every street corner, at every feast and gathering. It's the foundation of meals, the anchor of tables both rich and poor. And tonight you've tasted it in all its forms, simple and stuffed, savoury and sweet. The baker wraps 2 more loaves for you, one of each kind, tying them neatly with twine and placing them gently into your pouch, now nearly full with the night's offerings. For your travels, he says, his smile soft and genuine. The road is long, but bread makes it shorter. You thank him, your words quiet but heartfelt, and as you step back into the cool air, the scent of his oven follows you like a blessing. The street seems softer now, the edges blurred by the fog of the late hour and the fullness in your belly. As you walk away, the weight of your pouch pressing gently against your side, you can't help but marvel at the simplicity of it all. Flour, water, salt, a little heat, a little care. And yet somehow it feels like you're carrying something far more precious than bread. It feels like you're carrying the memory of every bite shared under the stars, every smile exchanged over a crusty loaf, every quiet, timeless moment spent savouring the taste of Rome's midnight heart. And deep inside you know this night, this slow, meandering, delicious night is far from over. The streets have grown quieter still, hushed beneath the weight of the late hour, as though even the city itself has drifted into slumber. Yet you continue to walk, the soft thud of your footsteps against the worn stones echoing in the empty alleyways. Your pouch feels heavy now, filled with the treasures of the night. Fig cakes, honey pastries, roasted nuts, spiced wine sweets, and loaves of stuffed bread, each bite carrying a memory, a voice, a story. But your senses remain keen, sharpened by the soft hum of curiosity that never quite fades. As you pass beneath an archway carved with fading reliefs of gods and harvest scenes, another scent beckons you. A rich buttery aroma mingling with something faintly herbal, tinged with smoke, and the faintest trace of honey. You follow it without hesitation, drawn down a narrow street that opens into a small garden courtyard. There, under the boughs of a fig tree heavy with fruit, sits an old woman tending to a low clay oven. Her hair is silver, coiled into braids pinned neatly beneath a dark scarf. Her hands move with steady purpose, folding delicate leaves around small parcels of dough before placing them carefully onto a stone slab near the embers. She notices you immediately, her face breaking into a soft, knowing smile. "You're late," she says, as if expecting you. Before you can answer, she gestures for you to sit, patting the stone bench beside her. "Come, there's still enough for one more." You sit, the stone cool against your legs, as she unwraps one of the delicate parcels and hands it to you. The leaf is fragrant, lightly charred at the edges, and when you peel it back, you reveal a small cake, golden, soft, and gently steaming. "Patina de Pyrrhus," she murmurs, "pear custard." You take a bite, and it's unlike anything you've tasted tonight. Smooth and creamy, with the delicate sweetness of pears, cooked down to velvet softness, bound together with eggs and honey, kissed by just a hint of spice, perhaps cinnamon or a trace of pepper. The crust crisped from the fire adds the faintest crunch, while the wrapping leaf imparts a subtle, earthy perfume. It's decadent, yes, but comforting too, like something a grandmother might make on a cool evening to soothe a troubled heart. She watches you with quiet satisfaction, her eyes crinkling at the corners as you savor another bite. "This," she says softly, "is a recipe for dreamers." Her voice is calm, steady, and you find yourself leaning in as she continues. She tells you that such custards were often prepared in Roman homes, especially for late-night meals where sweetness was needed to quiet the mind before sleep. Pears were beloved by the Romans, symbols of abundance and fertility, and were stewed, baked, or blended into rich dishes meant to nourish both body and spirit. They calm the stomach, she says with a knowing glance, and soften the heart. And here's something curious. Some historians suggest these soft desserts were reserved for special occasions or the wealthy, given the cost of eggs, honey, and spices. Others argue they were more common, especially in regions where pears grew in abundance. But sitting here, under the heavy boughs of a fruit tree, sharing this quiet moment in the flickering firelight, it feels timeless, something outside of wealth or class, something simply human. The old woman hums softly as she works, folding another parcel with slow, deliberate hands. The tune drifts through the air, light and sweet as the custard itself. You finish your cake, each bite melting slowly, leaving behind the soft, lingering sweetness of pear and honey. She hands you another treat, this one wrapped in fig leaves, smaller and darker, with a rich, sticky sheen. "Dulcia domestica," she says. "Stuffed dates." Inside you find dates packed tightly with nuts and herbs, then gently cooked in wine and honey until tender and fragrant. You bite into one, and the flavors bloom immediately. Deep, caramel sweetness from the dates, a soft crunch from pine nuts, and a surprising brightness from the herbs, perhaps mint or savory. It's bold, rich, and deeply satisfying, a fitting counterpoint to the soft custard. These, she explains, are eaten at the end of the feast, or in the quiet of the night. You can easily imagine Romans savouring these after a long dinner, reclining on couches, their bellies full, their eyes heavy with sleep. And in this moment you feel it too, the deep, slow pull of the night wrapping itself around you like a soft blanket. She places 2 more stuffed dates in a small pouch, slipping it into your hands without a word. "For the road," she whispers. As you rise to leave, she touches your arm gently, her voice low and kind. "Remember," she says, her eyes shining in the firelight, "the sweetest dreams come after the sweetest bites." Her words settle into your chest, warm and steady, as you step back into the cool night air. The garden fades behind you, but her presence lingers, woven into the scents, still clinging to your cloak: honey, pears, wine, and wood smoke. And as you walk away, your steps slow and soft, you realize something else. This night, long and winding though it has been, isn't merely about tasting Rome's midnight table. It's about surrendering to the quiet magic of the city, its flavors, its voices, its hidden corners, and letting it carry you wherever it wishes. And with your pouch now filled with the softest, sweetest of offerings, you walk deeper into the heart of the sleeping city, ready for wherever the night will take you next. You drift farther into the quiet streets, the scent of pears, honey, and wine-soaked dates still curling through the air around you. The old woman's words linger in your mind, soft as a lullaby, and her parting gift rests warmly in your pouch, tucked among the other midnight treasures. Rome feels different now, its grandeur softened by the night, its sharp edges blurred into gentle shadows. You pass under arches carved with scenes of harvest and feasting, the stone faces of long-forgotten gods watching you with knowing gazes. Somewhere far off a night bird calls, its song echoing down the empty streets like a reminder that the city never truly sleeps. But just as you begin to think the night has offered up all its secrets, another scent finds you, this one savoury and sharp, tinged with the briny bite of vinegar and the unmistakable warmth of roasted garlic. Curiosity stirs once again. You follow it, drawn into a narrow alley where the walls close in tightly, and the stones underfoot feel even more worn from centuries of passing feet. The alley opens suddenly into a small courtyard where a handful of people are gathered around a low fire, their faces lit by the flickering glow. At the centre of it all is a large, shallow pan resting atop a bed of glowing embers. A man with thick arms and a broad smile tends to it, stirring its contents with a long wooden spoon. The scent is richer up close, earthy, tangy, and deeply satisfying, with a hint of herbs that tickle your nose. He sees you lingering at the edge of the courtyard and gestures you forward. "Acetaria," he says warmly, offering you a wooden bowl filled with what looks like a warm salad of greens, lentils, and root vegetables, all glistening in a dressing of oil and vinegar. You sit among the group, the fire's warmth washing over you, and take a tentative bite. It's bright and bold, the tang of vinegar waking your palate immediately. The greens are soft but still hold a bit of bite, while the lentils are hearty and earthy. The dressing is simple: olive oil, vinegar, herbs, and a dash of salt. But it's enough to make the dish sing with flavour. You can't help but smile at the unexpected freshness of it all. The man laughs at your reaction, clearly pleased. "Good, isn't it?" he says, his voice rough but kind. "Simple food, but it fills you right." He explains that acetaria, what we might now call a salad, was common in Rome, especially among those who sought a lighter dish to balance out the heavier meats and breads of the day. While the Romans are often remembered for their indulgent feasts, they also appreciated the sharp, cleansing bite of vinegar-dressed greens. "Cuts through the richness," he says with a wink, passing you a crust of bread to soak up the juices at the bottom of your bowl. You savour the combination, the warm, chewy bread mingling with the bright, tangy dressing, and find it oddly refreshing after so many rich and sweet dishes. Around you the others eat quietly, enjoying their bowls of acetaria and roasted root vegetables seasoned with garlic and cumin. It's clear that this isn't a grand feast. It's a gathering of workers and wanderers, people who need a meal to carry them through the long night ahead. And yet in its simplicity, the food feels no less special than the decadent dishes you've sampled before. As you eat, the man tells you about how vinegar wasn't just a condiment in Rome. It was considered essential. Used in cooking, cleaning, and even medicine, it was prized for its ability to preserve and purify. Some say, he adds, leaning in with a conspiratorial grin, that vinegar keeps the mind sharp. You chuckle softly, thinking back on the many debates you've overheard tonight, and wonder just how much vinegar has been consumed in the city's countless arguments. Interestingly, historians still debate how widespread dishes like acetaria truly were in ancient Rome. Some believe they were a staple for the poor, while others argue they were enjoyed across all classes, especially by those who valued a lighter fare after heavy meals. But here, in this quiet courtyard, under the soft glow of firelight, there's no debate at all. The food is good, it's nourishing, it's enough. As you finish your bowl, the man offers you a small cup of vinegar, mixed with honey and water, a simple tonic meant to aid digestion and soothe the stomach. You sip it slowly, surprised by how refreshing it is, sweet and sour, cooling and sharp all at once. The others begin to drift away, their bowls empty, their bodies relaxed by the warmth of the fire and the comfort of their meal. The man hands you another small loaf of bread, wrapped in a cloth, his smile gentle and genuine. "For tomorrow," he says softly, when the hunger returns. You thank him quietly, slipping the bread into your already heavy pouch, now filled with the tastes and stories of the night. As you rise to leave, he gives you one last piece of advice, his voice low and steady. Remember, he says, it's not always the richest meal that stays with you, but the one that makes you feel whole. His words settle over you like a soft cloak as you step back into the cool night air. The streets are nearly empty now, the city wrapped in deep, velvety silence. But as you walk, you feel lighter somehow, satisfied not just in your stomach, but in your heart. And with every step, the memory of the night's many flavors, sweet, salty, sour, and everything in between, lingers like a quiet promise that there's still more to discover. Because here, in this ancient city of stone and shadows, every street holds a secret, and every bite tells a story. The city feels nearly weightless now, wrapped in a silence so complete that even your footsteps seem to dissolve into the night air. The streets stretch before you, empty and silvered under the moon's soft gaze, their familiar curves and twists, now as welcoming as old friends. Your pouch, heavy with bread, fruit, nuts, sweets, and other tokens of the night, rests against your hip with every step. A quiet reminder of all you've tasted, all you've heard, and all you've felt. Still, despite the fullness in your belly and the comfort in your bones, something tugs at you. A soft pull, gentle but persistent. The night isn't quite finished with you yet. As you walk deeper into the slumbering heart of Rome, you catch the faintest scent carried on the breeze. It's smoky, yes, but tinged with something else, something sweet and rich, almost floral, with the barest trace of spice. Your feet move of their own accord, drawn toward the aroma, as though the city itself is guiding you onward. Soon you find yourself standing before a modest building with a wide, open doorway. Inside, a single brazier glows softly, casting shadows that dance across the walls. The room is quiet, save for the gentle crackle of the fire, and the occasional soft murmur of voices speaking in low, relaxed tones. A man with calm eyes and steady hands tends to a small pot suspended over the coals, stirring its contents with deliberate care. The scent grows stronger, filling the air with warmth and comfort. He glances up as you enter, offering a quiet nod of welcome. Posca, he says simply, gesturing toward the pot. You recognize the word, though only faintly. Vinegar drink. He pours the steaming liquid into a clay cup and sets it before you. You lift the cup carefully, intrigued by the cloudy, pale liquid within. The aroma is sharp but not unpleasant, tart vinegar softened by herbs and what seems like honey. You take a tentative sip. It surprises you immediately. The drink is bright and bracing, its initial sourness softened by the warmth of honey and the mellow bitterness of the herbs. It's invigorating but also strangely soothing, a drink that wakes you up while easing something deeper inside. You sip again, savouring the way the flavours unfold slowly on your tongue. The man watches you with a faint smile, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Soldiers drink this, he says softly, to keep their bodies strong and their minds clear. He tells you how Posca was once the drink of Roman legions, a simple mixture of vinegar, water, and sometimes herbs or honey, carried by soldiers as they marched across the empire. It was cheap, easy to prepare, and beloved for its ability to quench thirst while warding off illness. It cleanses, he says, inside and out. You can see why it became so popular, especially in a city where indulgence reigned. There's something refreshing about its simplicity. No luxury, no excess, just pure honest flavour. Interestingly, historians still debate how common Posca truly was outside of military camps. Some suggest it was strictly for the lower classes, while others believe it crossed social boundaries, enjoyed by anyone who appreciated its sharp, bracing qualities. But here, in this quiet room under the soft glow of the brazier, it feels universal. Humble, yes, but also deeply human. As you sip slowly, the man offers you a plate of small salted fish, arranged neatly with slices of flatbread and olives. Simple food, he says, for simple hours. You take a bite, and the flavors are bold and direct. The saltiness of the fish, the richness of the olives, and the crisp, chewy bread, creating a combination that's rustic but deeply satisfying. Together with the posca, it forms a meal that feels ancient in every sense, rooted in tradition, stripped of any excess, yet comforting in a way that transcends time. Around you, others sit quietly, sipping their drinks, eating their small plates, and sharing soft conversations that drift lazily through the air, like the smoke from the brazier. The man speaks again, his voice low and thoughtful. They say, he murmurs, that this drink holds memories of battles fought, of roads walked, of nights like this one. You finish your cup slowly, feeling the drink settle warmly in your chest, the sourness fading into a quiet calm. He offers to refill your cup, and you accept without hesitation. As he pours, he adds a few leaves from a small clay jar, herbs, fragrant and soft, releasing their aroma into the steam. For peace, he says simply. You drink again, and this time the posca tastes different, more mellow, the herbs lending it a subtle sweetness that lingers in the back of your throat. You sit with the cup cradled in your hands, savouring the quiet, the warmth, the steady heartbeat of the night that seems to slow around you. And as you sip, you can't help but think how strange it is that something as simple as vinegar and water could carry such weight, such comfort, such quiet power. It's a reminder that not every part of the Roman table was about decadence or display. Some meals, some drinks, were meant to nourish more than just the body. As you finish the last sip, the man presses a small, wrapped bundle into your hand, dried herbs, carefully tied with twine. For your next cup, he says with a faint smile, wherever the road may take you. You nod in gratitude, slipping the bundle into your pouch, now nearly overflowing with tokens of the night. As you rise to leave, the man's voice follows you, soft and steady. Remember, he says, sometimes the simplest things last the longest. His words settle over you as you step back into the night, the cool air wrapping around you like a familiar cloak. The streets are still empty, still silent, but you feel no loneliness, only a sense of deep, quiet connection to every corner of this ancient city. And as you walk onward, your pouch heavy and your heart light, you know there are still more tastes, more stories, waiting just beyond the next bend in the road. The streets seem to stretch endlessly ahead of you now, quiet and soft beneath the silver veil of moonlight. The city is asleep, yet it feels as though it's breathing all around you, steady, ancient, and familiar. Your pouch has grown heavier with each step of the night, filled not just with food, but with fragments of stories, whispered secrets, and the laughter of strangers who welcomed you as their own. And still, something in you knows this night isn't finished yet. You follow the winding streets deeper into the city, guided now by instinct more than by any scent or sound. The air grows cooler, tinged with the faintest trace of wood smoke and herbs, and you can sense another story waiting just ahead. Soon, the alleyway opens onto a small terrace overlooking a quiet garden below. A soft glow spills from a nearby doorway, the scent of simmering herbs and baked cheese curling through the air like a siren's call. You step toward it, drawn by the warmth, and inside you find a large hearth surrounded by shelves of clay jars, each labelled with neat hand-painted letters. Hanging bundles of dried thyme and rosemary sway gently in the breeze from a nearby window. A woman stands at the hearth, stirring a pot with slow, practiced motions. Her face is calm, her hair streaked with grey and tied back loosely. She doesn't startle when you enter. Instead, she gestures for you to sit at the long wooden table set before the fire. Without a word, she ladles a thick, creamy stew into a shallow bowl and sets it before you, alongside a small loaf of bread still warm from her oven. Pulse punica, she says softly. Carthaginian porridge. You pause, intrigued by the name. The dish is thick and hearty, a rich blend of grains, ground nuts, herbs, and just a hint of honey. You take your first bite and it's soothing. Creamy yet textured, with the soft chew of ground barley and the earthy flavour of crushed walnuts and hazelnuts mingling with a subtle sweetness. There's a faint undertone of spices you can't quite place. Perhaps cumin, maybe coriander. But it all blends into something deeply comforting, warm and filling without being heavy. The bread beside it is coarse and slightly sour, perfect for scooping up the stew and soaking in its richness. The woman watches you with quiet satisfaction, her hands never idle as she prepares another pot nearby. An old recipe, she says softly, her voice carrying the calm of someone who has spent many years in the kitchen. Older than Rome itself, from across the sea. She explains that pulse punica, a Carthaginian dish adopted by Romans, was a staple in many kitchens, especially among those who appreciated its nourishing, simple qualities. Grains and nuts formed its base, while fresh herbs and honey elevated it into something more than mere sustenance. It was said to bring strength, she adds, and to quiet restless hearts. And indeed you can feel it working its magic on you with every bite, steadying, grounding, comforting. She speaks of how the dish was once enjoyed by both commoners and scholars, its ingredients humble but adaptable. Some added dried fruits or cheese for richness, while others kept it plain, letting the grains and nuts speak for themselves. Historians, she notes with a faint smile, still argue over its place in Roman society. Some claim it was little more than peasant fare, while others believe it was enjoyed at grand banquets, a symbol of Rome's willingness to borrow from the cultures it conquered. But here, she says, her eyes meeting yours, it's simply food, honest, nourishing, and kind. You nod slowly, savouring each spoonful, the warmth of the dish sinking deep into your belly, softening the edges of the long night. As you eat, she offers you a small side dish, a wedge of aged cheese drizzled with honey and sprinkled with cracked black pepper. The combination is unexpected, yet harmonious, the sharpness of the cheese softened by the honey, the pepper adding a gentle heat that lingers pleasantly on your tongue. Together with the porridge, it feels like a meal that could sustain a traveller through any journey, whether across empires or through the winding streets of a sleeping city. The woman sets a small jar on the table beside you, its contents shimmering amber under the firelight. For later, she says with a soft smile, barley honey paste, sweet, strong, and good for dreams. You thank her quietly, tucking the jar into your pouch with care, its weight somehow reassuring. As you finish your meal, she pours you a final cup of warm water, infused with lemon and thyme, its scent bright and calming. You sip slowly, the herbal notes cleansing your palate and easing your breath. She watches you with calm eyes, her hands now resting gently on the table. Some nights, she says softly, you don't need grand feasts or rare delicacies. You just need warmth. And something that feels like home. Her words settle into the room like the last note of a lullaby. And as you rise to leave, she doesn't offer farewells or parting gifts beyond what you already carry. Instead, she simply nods, her gaze steady and kind, as if she knows you'll carry this moment with you long after the night has faded. You step back into the cool air, the garden below bathed in moonlight, the scent of herbs lingering on your skin, Your pouch is nearly full now, but it feels less like a burden and more like a collection of quiet blessings, each one a reminder of the warmth, the kindness, and the quiet nourishment you found along the way. And as you walk once more into the sleeping streets, you know that this night still holds a few final secrets, waiting patiently just beyond the next bend. The streets have grown impossibly quiet now, wrapped in a stillness so complete it feels almost sacred. Even the wind seems to tiptoe through the alleys, rustling fig leaves and olive branches with the gentlest of sighs. You walk slowly, each step deliberate, as though afraid to break the spell of the night. Your pouch presses comfortably against your side, heavy with the many gifts of the evening, breads, sweets, cheeses, and jars of honeyed paste, all carrying the warmth of the hands that gave them. But as you pass beneath another ancient archway, its stones worn smooth by centuries of passing souls, a new scent greets you, smoky and sharp, but with something floral underneath, something almost ceremonial. Your feet guide you toward it, though your body feels slower now, heavier under the weight of the hours and the many meals. The scent leads you into a wide, open square that feels tucked away from the city itself, hidden behind tall stone walls covered in ivy. At its centre burns a small bonfire surrounded by a circle of seated figures cloaked in heavy robes. Their faces are softened by the flickering flames, their eyes half closed as they hum a low, rhythmic chant. A woman with thick, dark curls notices you lingering at the edge of the gathering. She gestures you forward, her hand beckoning in a slow, deliberate motion. You approach, drawn by the scent and the strange, soothing sound of the chant. Before you can speak, she offers you a small wooden bowl filled with a thick, dark mixture, dense, almost syrupy, and topped with fresh herbs and crushed nuts. Libum nocturnum, she says softly. Night libation bread. You take the bowl, the heat of it warming your fingers, and sit near the fire where the others sway gently with the song, eyes closed as if lost in memory. You lift a spoonful to your lips, and the flavours are rich and complex, sweet, yes, but with layers of toasted grains, honey, and spices like cinnamon and myrtle. The herbs add a freshness that brightens each bite, while the nuts bring a deep, satisfying earthiness. It's unlike anything else you've tasted tonight. Heavier, deeper, almost meditative. The woman watches you closely, her voice a soft murmur as she explains. This is bread for offerings, she says, shared with the gods, the ancestors, and the night itself. She tells you how lebum, ritual cakes made with cheese, flour, and honey, were often prepared for religious ceremonies, laid upon altars to honour the gods and spirits of the household. But here they've made a different version, darker and richer, meant to be shared among those who gather in the quietest hours to reflect, remember, and give thanks. It's not meant to satisfy hunger, she adds with a knowing smile. It's meant to soften the heart. You continue eating slowly, savouring the depth of each bite. It's dense and filling, yes, but comforting in a way that reaches beyond your stomach, settling into the spaces between your thoughts. Around you, the others begin to pass small clay cups, filled with a warm, spiced beverage that smells of cloves and rosemary. You accept one gratefully, the cup warming your hands. The drink is thick, almost like a broth, with a faint sweetness and an herbal sharpness that lingers long after each sip. The woman smiles again, watching you closely. They say, she murmurs, that this drink carries the voices of those who came before. She doesn't explain further, nor does she need to. You can feel it in the way the warmth spreads through you, loosening the tight knots of the night's long journey and leaving behind only calm, steady peace. As you sit there, surrounded by the soft chanting and the crackling of the fire, You begin to notice how everything feels. Slower. The food, the drink, the voices, they blend together into something almost dreamlike, as if the boundary between the living city and the memories of its past has softened, allowing you to drift freely between them. You wonder how many others have sat here before you, sharing this bread, this drink, this quiet communion under the watchful gaze of the stars. The woman leans in one last time, her voice barely louder than the crackle of the flames. Some say, she whispers, that those who eat at the night's altar never truly leave the city. A part of them always lingers. Her words don't feel ominous. In fact, they're strangely comforting, like an invitation rather than a warning. As the gathering begins to fade, the others slipping away into the shadows as quietly as they had appeared, the woman places a small cloth-wrapped bundle into your hands, still warm, still fragrant. For the next time the night finds you, she says. You tuck it carefully into your pouch, its weight joining the other treasures from your long journey. As you stand, the woman smiles one final time, her eyes bright with something you can't quite name. Remember, she says gently, every night is an offering, and every offering finds its way home. Her words follow you as you step back into the empty streets, the firelight fading behind you, leaving only the soft glow of the moon and the quiet song of your footsteps. The city feels different now, quieter, yes, but also more alive, as though every stone and shadow is watching, waiting, holding its breath for the dawn. And as you walk onward, the taste of the night's final offering still lingering on your tongue. You know the night has nearly finished its tale, but not quite yet. The city feels weightless beneath your feet now, as if you're gliding through its streets rather than walking. There is no rush left in you, no hunger either, only a calm, steady curiosity that keeps your feet moving forward, deeper into the quiet embrace of the night. The moon has begun its slow descent, dipping lower toward the horizon, casting longer shadows that stretch across the worn stones of the alleyways. You can sense it, the night nearing its end, the world holding its breath before the soft stirrings of dawn. Still, your journey isn't quite finished. You follow the winding streets without thought, your body moving as if it knows where to go before your mind can catch up. The air has shifted again, now carrying a smoky scent tinged with herbs and the faint sweetness of dried fruit. It's familiar somehow, comforting and nostalgic, like a memory you can't quite place. Soon, you find yourself at the edge of a small, secluded courtyard, tucked away behind high stone walls. Inside, a few figures gather around a large clay oven built into the wall, its surface cracked and blackened from years of steady use. A man tends to it with practiced ease, his hands steady as he pulls out a tray of small pastries, their golden crusts glistening in the low light. He catches sight of you and smiles, his face warm and welcoming. "Placenta," he says simply, holding up one of the pastries for you to see. You've heard of this before, a layered cake of sorts, known for its rich filling of cheese, honey, and spiced nuts, all wrapped in thin sheets of dough. Without hesitation you step forward, and he places one into your hands, its surface still warm from the oven. The pastry is heavier than it looks, its layers soft and yielding beneath your fingers. You take a bite, and the flavors unfold slowly, luxuriously. The outer layers are crisp and buttery, flaking apart with every movement. Beneath them, the filling is rich and creamy, soft cheese blended with honey, crushed almonds, and just a hint of cinnamon. It's sweet but not overpowering, balanced by the subtle saltiness of the cheese and the warmth of the spices. Each bite feels like it lingers longer than the last, coating your tongue in richness. The man chuckles softly as he watches you savor it. "They say," he begins, his voice low and smooth, that this is the oldest cake in the city. He explains that placenta has been part of Roman kitchens for generations, borrowed from older cultures and transformed into something uniquely Roman over time. Once reserved for festivals and grand celebrations, it slowly became a dish of comfort, prepared in homes to mark both special days and quiet, ordinary evenings. It feeds both the body and the spirit, he adds, and leaves you full in ways you won't understand until later. You smile at his words, recognizing their truth already settling in your chest. As you eat, the other figures around the oven begin to share their own versions of placenta, some with added layers of dried figs, others with extra honey or sharper cheeses. The variations are endless, each one carrying the signature of its maker, a quiet reflection of their tastes and memories. The man hands you another slice, this one slightly different, thicker, with a darker filling made from dates and spiced wine. You taste it, and it's deeper, richer, almost intoxicating, with the fruit melting into the layers of dough, the wine adding a subtle complexity that lingers long after the bite is gone. This one, he says with a soft grin, is for the end of the night. And somehow it feels fitting, an indulgence meant to close the evening's long winding feast. Interestingly, historians still debate the exact origins and significance of placenta. Some believe it remained a dish for the wealthy, prepared only during feasts and temple offerings. Others argue it was far more widespread, baked in small homes and village ovens across the empire. But here, in this quiet courtyard beneath the stars, such debates feel distant and irrelevant. What matters is the moment itself, the shared warmth of the oven, the soft murmur of conversation, the satisfaction of a pastry that feels older than memory itself. As you finish the last bite, the man hands you a small wrapped parcel, another slice, carefully folded in cloth. For when you miss tonight, he says with a knowing smile. You thank him, slipping it gently into your pouch, already feeling the weight of it, as something more than just food. The others begin to drift away, their faces glowing with the quiet contentment of those who know they've eaten well, not just in the body, but in the soul. As you stand to leave, the man gives you one final piece of advice, his voice low and steady. Remember, he says, his gaze holding yours, the best meals are the ones that follow you home. His words settle over you as you step back into the streets, the last traces of the courtyard fading behind you. The city feels softer now, as though it too has eaten its fill and is ready to rest. And as you walk through the final stretches of the night, the taste of honey, cheese and spiced wine still lingering on your tongue, you know the night's journey is nearly complete. But just as with every good meal, there is always room for one last bite. The streets are nearly empty now, bathed in the softest light of the approaching dawn. A faint blush tinges the horizon, just enough to blur the stars and melt the edges of the night. The city is beginning to stir, but gently like a great beast rolling in its sleep. Your steps are slower now, not out of weariness, but from a quiet reluctance to let go of the night. Your pouch is heavy, filled to the brim with the gifts of the evening. Bread, sweets, cheeses, herbs, and wrapped pastries. Each carrying a memory, a voice, a fragment of a story that now belongs to you. You walk through the nearly silent forum, the great columns and marble statues watching you pass. Their faces seem softer in this dim, in-between light, as if they too are savouring these last moments of night before the day arrives. Then, just as you think your journey is complete, you catch the faintest scent drifting on the breeze, something warm and toasty, tinged with honey and a hint of spice. It's subtle, almost shy, but impossible to resist. You follow it instinctively, winding down a narrow alley where a single stall still glows under the fading moonlight. An old man tends to a small clay oven, carefully pulling out flatbreads as thin as parchment, their surfaces dusted with herbs and sesame seeds. His movements are slow but precise, his focus unwavering. Without looking up, he speaks softly, as if he's been expecting you all along. "Panis dulcis," he says, placing a warm round of bread onto a cloth. "Sweet bread." You step closer, the scent washing over you. Roasted flour, wild honey, and something faintly floral like orange blossom or rose water. He hands you the bread, still warm from the oven, its edges crisp, but its center soft and tender. You take a bite. The sweetness is gentle and subtle, woven into the dough rather than sitting on top of it. The bread is soft and fragrant, laced with honey and tiny bursts of dried fruit, perhaps figs or raisins, and speckled with sesame seeds that crackle lightly between your teeth. It's humble but comforting in a way that no grand feast could ever match. The old man watches you with quiet amusement, his eyes kind and bright. "They say," he murmurs, "this bread is meant for endings." He explains that panis dulcis was often baked in the early hours just before dawn, meant to be eaten after long nights of prayer, festivals, or quiet wandering. It was a transitional food, a gentle bridge between darkness and light, between fasting and feasting, between old day and new. It reminds you, he says, that sweetness can last, but only if you take it slowly. You savor every bite, letting the bread dissolve on your tongue, the honey warming you from within. As you eat, he offers you a small clay cup filled with warm milk steeped with herbs, thyme, lavender, and a whisper of fennel. You drink slowly, the flavors soft and soothing, the milk thick and comforting like a blanket wrapped around your chest. The city around you feels utterly still now, as though it's pausing with you, lingering in this moment before the sun officially rises. The old man wraps another round of sweet bread for you, tying it neatly with a strip of cloth. "For later," he says gently, his voice almost a whisper. "When you need to remember tonight." You tuck it into your pouch, the last of many treasures now resting against your side, and feel the quiet weight of all you've collected, not just food, but warmth, kindness, and the soft hum of the city's heart at night. As you rise to leave, the old man looks at you with a smile that feels older than Rome itself. "Remember," he says, "every night has its sweetness. You just have to walk far enough to find it." You step back into the street as the first rays of sunlight stretch across the city, soft and golden, washing the marble and stone in a warm glow. The shadows begin to retreat, but you don't feel sad watching them go. Instead, you feel full, completely deeply full, not only in your belly, but in your chest, your mind, your very bones. You've wandered through Rome's midnight, tasted its quiet offerings, and listened to its softest voices. And now, as you walk slowly toward the rising sun, you carry those memories with you, tucked away in every step, every breath, every lingering flavor still resting on your tongue. The city awakens behind you, but the night remains within you, calm, steady, and sweet. The streets blur gently as your eyelids grow heavier, the images of the night fading like a dream slipping just beyond reach. And as your steps grow slower, softer, you feel yourself drifting away, wrapped in the quiet embrace of everything you've seen, heard, and tasted. End of script. Sweet dreams.